a look at some of the defining moments that shaped America's outgoing commander-in-chief as a leader and as a person. Dozens of Boko Haram fighters surrender to authorities in southern Niger. And remembering some famous names of those who have passed on in 2016. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We begin in West Africa, where dozens of Boko Haram fighters have given themselves up to authorities in southern Niger on Wednesday, according to the nation's interior minister. The fighters arrived in the remote desert town of Difa in groups and are being held by local authorities. Their surrender comes days after the militant groups have suffered key losses over the border in Nigeria. Tens of thousands of people fled Difa in June as Boko Haram swept across the region. It is unclear what will become of the terror group's fighters, but Nigerian authorities say there is a possibility that they could be reintegrated back into society. Hundreds of Boko Haram fighters surrendered in Chad in October and November as the group ceded territory. Well, now to East Africa, where rape and other forms of gender-based violence are said to be rampant in Somalia. Many women and girls say they live in constant fear, and many of these crimes go unreported. But now activists are trying to address the issue. At a symposium held earlier this week, speakers urged Somalia's youth to push government agencies to effectively tackle gender and sexual violence. The event was organized by the African Union Mission in Somalia and other local partners to raise awareness during 16 days of activism, an international campaign to challenge violence against women and girls, and also educate the public on the importance of respecting individual freedoms. Ifra Ahmed, the director of Ifra Foundation, which campaigns against female genital mutilation, says gender-based violence could be better addressed when other critical issues affecting the youth in Somalia are tackled.
This program is targeting the youth because they are normally targeted for recruitment into terrorism or end up becoming immigrants. It is important that the youth come together to discuss issues affecting them so that they guard against being conscripted into terrorism or becoming immigrants.
Well, Somalia's lawlessness has seen people kill and rape without impunity. Now, the country has been without an effective central government since the overthrow of dictator Mohamed Siad Barre in 1991 and is struggling to rebuild amid insecurity challenges. The new year may see a turning point for the Central African Republic after more than 3 years of conflict and instability. The first company of a new national army has completed its training and is expected to be operational in January. Military trainers from the European Union expect to train as many as 2,000 new soldiers over the next 2 years. Zach Badoff has more.
Central African troops show off their skills in this hostage rescue simulation.
Today, I'm satisfied. Why? Because it's still early yet, but the people of the Central African Republic have seen today the fruit of the work that has been done.
The European Union training mission has pronounced this group of 170 soldiers operationally ready. They are the first Army company to complete the 14-week course, which included physical fitness, communications, close quarters combat, topography, first aid, weapons training, and other skills necessary for combat.
It's our mission to restore and consolidate a climate of peace. You must have permanent security to enable the government to regain control of its national territory.
The new army faces an uphill battle. The CAR has not had a national army since early 2013, when a rebel coup plunged the country into crisis. The CAR has been dependent on international troops for stability. Outside the capital, armed groups continue to control many mineral-rich areas and tax trade along the roads. The EU will start training 2 more companies in January. The trainers plan to certify 2 to 3 battalions before their mission ends in September 2018.
The reconstruction of the Central African Republic today requires time and requires patience. This work we are doing, we are trying to build something solid, built on concrete, not sand, so that it lasts.
But time isn't the only challenge. The CAR remains under a UN arms embargo. The government has repeatedly called for the embargo to be lifted. Some weapons could be acquired for the army if the UN Sanctions Committee approves.
I'm quite sure that when there is some good reasons and the COI that we have trained and that is going to be involved in a future mission, operational mission, is a very good reason. If the South African government is requesting the partial lift to equip that COI, it will be done.
However, the French general said the CAR will then likely need donor funds to pay for the new weapons. But for now, officials speak with pride about these graduating troops and the fresh start they signify. Zach Badorf for VOA News, Bangui.
Well, back to West Africa. On January 7th, Ghana's President-elect Nana Akufo-Addo is set to be sworn in for his first four-year term. On a continent where elections are often accompanied by anxiety and uncertainty, many people are impressed by the nation's smooth electoral process and, once again, what promises to be a peaceful transition of power. As Shefa Dankwa reports from Accra.
For the seventh time in Ghana's fourth republic, the nation has successively cemented its credentials as the democratic giant on the African continent. Electorate on the 7th of December 2016 went to the polls in what may be described as a keenly contested election to elect their president and 275 parliamentarians to steer the affairs of the country for the next 4 years. The elections were described as free and fair by both international and domestic election observers.
Generally, I think I share that perspective, and I think considering some of the pre-election tension and observations and utterances coming from some of the key players, mainly the two main political parties, and some of the challenges that the Electoral Commission had faced in terms of series of litigations at the law courts. Some of us were a little bit worried that the elections may end up being another legal battle. But I think the way it turned out really surprised many of us.
The storyline since Ghana returned to a multi-party democracy in 1992 after a series of coups has been consistent. Minor and major disputes over election results in 2004 and in 2012 have not led to any violence.
I would credit the Ghanaian people for such an impressive showing of maturity in terms of understanding what politics really is.
All things being equal, government will on the 7th of January 2017 change hands from the incumbent NDC to the NPP. The incoming government, the NPP, campaigned on the subject of stemming out corruption and creating jobs for the teeming youth through the One District, One Factory promise. Yet, there are other challenges that need attention, paramount among them being the rising external debt, which now stands at over $100 billion.
The major tax for them to handle now is the economy. The economy taking into consideration the fact that there's huge interest to be paid on the loans that have secured by the outgoing government. Talking about unemployment, yes, it's a big issue, but given the fact that this is a center-right party and they believe in the private sector, if they get the private sector to run, I think the private sector will be able to absorb the major issue of unemployment in Ghana.
For the third time in Ghana's 24 years of uninterrupted democratic rule, an opposition leader will be sworn in as the president, a practice which is gradually becoming a ritual in Ghana's polity. For VOA, this is Shefa Dankwa reporting from Accra, Ghana.
Well, 75 years after Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor during World War II killed 2,400 American servicemen, U.S. President Barack Obama and Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe made a historic visit to the memorial to honor the victims and to stress the message of reconciliation. Yasusa Oni has our report.
One day after the attack on December 7, 1941, then U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt called it
a date which will live in infamy.
Now, 75 years later, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, accompanied by President Barack Obama, made a historic visit Tuesday to the resting place of many of the victims.
Listening again as I focus my senses. Alongside the song of the breeze and the rumble of the rolling waves, I can almost discern the voices of those crewmen.
Paying respects at the USS Arizona Memorial, which sits above the remains of the sunken battleship, the Japanese Prime Minister offered his condolences and a promise.
We must never repeat the horrors of war again.
Abe's visit comes 7 months after Obama became the first sitting American president to visit Hiroshima, where the U.S. dropped a nuclear bomb, killing tens of thousands of Japanese civilians in the closing days of World War II. Abe, like Obama, did not apologize for his country's past. Instead, he highlighted efforts by the U.S. to mend relations since the war. Obama also stressed the importance of reconciliation.
Wars can end. The most bitter of adversaries can become the strongest of allies. The fruits of peace always outweigh the plunder of war.
Alfred Rodriguez, a survivor of the Pearl Harbor attack, welcomed the visit of the Prime Minister and said he holds no animosity towards Japan.
I'm glad it's coming to, show that we're all peaceful now. And, we were doing what we were supposed to do, and they were doing what they were supposed to do.
It's a reminder of old enemies turned allies and a friendship that now faces an uncertain future as a new administration prepares to take office in Washington next month. Jesus Samaoni, VOA News.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vincent Makori. Coming up, a look at some of the defining moments that shaped America's departing commander-in-chief. Stay with us.
Here's what's new.
What's new? Security drones made by the Israeli company Percepto, meant to render human security guards obsolete. Percepto's fully autonomous drones use real-time computer vision technology. Percepto's Ariel Avitan.
Enabling the drone to identify a human or a car, alert that there's something wrong or there's a suspicious object near a fence, and then track it if needed.
The company's promotional video depicts a security breach scenario. The drone is seen launching automatically and heading to the designated area after a security alert was generated. As it arrives on site, it uses computer vision technology to analyze the image and identify and follow the intruder until a security team arrives. Security expert Ofer Bar-Levav.
The drones enable us to replace manned guards and manned patrols.
The VOA's What's New. I'm Todd Grosson.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international calling talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
In Wednesday's business news, one of the key themes for global investment this year has been infrastructure spending. So let's wrap up the final business report of 2016 with the 5 largest African infrastructure mega projects. Here's Africa 54's business correspondent, Jill Malandrino, reporting from the NASDAQ market site in New York.
Africa is undergoing a major facelift with the help of the Chinese and Africa 50, among many other investors and contributors. Before we get into the 5 mega projects, I just want to point out that U.S. stocks open relatively flat as we go into the 3rd final trading days of the year. Now back to the mega projects. The China-Africa project points out some of the most fascinating infrastructure feats on the continent. First, we go to the Republic of Congo. Redefining the meaning of mega project is the Grand Inga Dam, a complex hydropower project which could potentially power 40% of Africa. When completed, this dam will be the largest of its kind, with double the capacity of the Three Gorges Dam of China, the current largest in the world. Worthy of a mention, and a project we've covered before, is the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Next, we go to Tanzania. At a cost of around $11 billion, Tanzania's Bagamoyo port is its show of eagerness to accept its economic expansion and even accelerate it. The port should be able to handle 20 million containers annually when completed. While Kenya is known as the banking center of Africa, Kanza Tech City should be considered as Africa's official invitation to the future. Since 2008, when the government of Kenya approved the creation of the city, the role of Africa in defining what future cities should look like has been asserted. The city will cost a cool $14.5 billion. Though it was completed in 2014, the Jasper project makes a list for its groundbreaking role in clean energy in Africa. Now, this is out of South Africa. It supplies 80,000 homes with clean solar-generated electricity from over 325,000 solar panels. That makes it the largest solar harvesting project in the whole continent. Finally, we head to Africa's largest economy, Nigeria. Nigeria and China are partnering to build 1,400-kilometer railway stretching from Lagos to Calabar. It has been described as one of the highest value rail projects in African history. China Railway predicted the venture would create around 200,000 jobs for Nigerian locals during construction and 30,000 permanent jobs once the line had been completed. From the NASDAQ market site in New York, I'm Jill Malandrino, and this is Africa 54 Business News.
Well, U.S. President Barack Obama was swept into office 8 years ago, promising hope and change. Now, he leaves the White House with one of the highest approval ratings of any president in modern history, at nearly 59%. VOA White House correspondent Cindy Sain takes a look at some defining moments that shaped Barack Obama as a leader and as a person.
The image of the first African-American ever elected U.S. president, holding hands with his wife and two young daughters, may have forever altered Americans' perceptions about who can win the White House.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer.
Americans give Obama high marks for parenting, even those who disagree with some of his policies.
Perhaps more than any president, he has integrated his family life with his leadership of the country. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Early on, Obama focused on bringing to justice Osama bin Laden, the al-Qaeda leader who had eluded former President George W. Bush. Late in the evening of Sunday, May 2nd, 2011, Obama addressed the American people.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
But that big victory was soon followed by the start of the deadly civil war in Syria. And on August 21, 2012, Obama issued a warning to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad that came back to haunt the U.S. leader.
We cannot have a situation where chemical or biological weapons are falling into the hands of the wrong people. We have been very clear to the Assad regime, but also to other players on the ground, that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized.
1 year later, observers say Assad's army killed more than 1,000 people with sarin gas. Contrary to expectations, the U.S. did not respond with force. Syrian researcher Haid Haid said it was then the hopes of many Syrians were dashed.
What's happening in Syria is just
another battle and the biggest fight there.
Domestically, following racial incidents, President Obama spoke out about the state of race relations in America. The massacre of 9 African Americans at a church Bible study group in June 2015 led the president to reflect about the grace shown by the victims' families who had forgiven the gunman.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
On the world stage, Obama departed from past policy to create historic openings with Burma and Cuba. In Havana, he reached out directly to the Cuban people.
Because in many ways, the United States and Cuba are like two brothers who've been estranged for many years, even as we share the same blood.
The president seemed to relish the chance to interact with young people, like this group in Vietnam.
Tình hình một mình nhà lầu trình in giàu sang như vua chúa giật mình sự tình thiệt ra đen đúa mà đời vậy là hey, it's been a crazy day.
Obama said although his time as president is coming to an end, the worldwide network he launched to encourage leadership among young people is just beginning. Cindy Sain, VOA News, the White House.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, remembering some of the famous names of those who have passed on in 2016. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Nigeria, the army releases video that appears to show soldiers clearing villages in one of Boko Haram's last remaining strongholds. In Libya, the bodies of 11 migrants who died trying to make the dangerous journey to Europe have washed up on beaches around Libya's capital, Tripoli. In Somalia, 248 members of parliament are sworn in on Tuesday at a ceremony in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Finally, 2016 was a year where millions across southern Africa and parts of East Africa were affected by a devastating drought. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Every song has a different meaning to each person that hears it and interprets it differently. Border Crossings is unique in that it lets the listeners decide what we're playing. But we bring in guests so that our audience has access to some of the biggest names in pop music today. And we reach out to the audience each and every day in different ways.
The world lost some famous names this year, from a dictator apathetic towards the United States to the oldest person ever in space. VOA's Rasha Rabasadi has a brief chronological look at those and several others who died in 2016 and how people around the world remembered them.
Pop music icon and celebrity David Bowie died of cancer in January at 69. He was remembered around the world and above it. A tribute by Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield singing Bowie's Space Oddity departing from the International Space Station.
Though I've flown 100,000 miles, I'm feeling very still.
Justice Antonin Scalia of the United States Supreme Court died in February. Appointed by President Ronald Reagan in 1986, Scalia was a conservative justice who interpreted the Constitution as it was understood at the time of its adoption. Also in February, Boutros Ghali died. He was the 6th Secretary General of the United Nations, and he was both the first African and first Arab to hold that office. Former First Lady Nancy Reagan died in March at the age of 94. Mrs. Reagan was an actor like her husband, and she championed the anti-drug Just Say No campaign. Pop superstar Prince, widely called one of the most talented musicians on earth, died in April of a drug overdose at 57. Many mourned his death by celebrating his music. Legendary boxer Muhammad Ali died in June from respiratory problems after a long battle with Parkinson's disease. Ali was a civil rights hero who changed his name from Cassius Clay when he converted to Islam. The U.S. government jailed Ali for his refusal to fight in the Vietnam War. Holocaust survivor and Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel died at 87 in July. He was a professor who authored nearly 60 books and helped establish the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington. Former Israeli President Shimon Peres died of a stroke in July. Peres, Yitzhak Rabin, and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1994 for Arab-Israeli peace talks that led to the signing of the Oslo Accords. Communist Cuban leader Fidel Castro died in November. Known for his cigars and military dress, Castro was a polarizing figure admired for snubbing Western capitalism but criticized for human rights abuses and impoverishing Cuba's economy. John Glenn, the first American to orbit the Earth, died in December at the age of 95. He served 4 terms as a U.S. Senator from his home state of Ohio. In 1998, at 77, he became the oldest human in space. I guess I'm older. On Christmas Day, 80s music icon George Michael died at the age of 53. He rose to stardom co-founding the pop duo Wham!, but Michael quietly donated millions to children, cancer victims, and those living with AIDS. And on December 27th, screenwriter, actress, and Star Wars royalty Carrie Fisher died. Fisher most famously played Princess Leia in the original trilogy. She recently suffered a heart attack on a flight from London to Los Angeles. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings, Today Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us here in Washington. Have a good night.
I'm Linor Moudou from Africa 54. This is VOA. Follow us on Africa 54. Go to facebook.com/VOA Africa 54.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
Here is U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry talking about U.S. and Chinese relations.
Listen for this word.
Emergence.
We welcome the emergence of a peaceful, stable, prosperous China that contributes to the stability and the development of the region and that chooses to play a responsible role in world affairs.
Emergence means the act of something appearing. It is coming out of hiding or just beginning.
Emergence also can describe nature, like the emergence of flowers, which come every spring.
Now, when you hear the word emergence, you will know what this newsword means.